Let's go to paragraph 13, prorations.
So prorations are basically stating that the taxes are paid in arrears. All taxes are paid in arrears, and so this is confusing to a lot of agents. Taxes are paid in arrears where insurance is paid a year ahead of time.
Yeah.
So at closing, a seller will credit the buyer taxes from January 1 through the day of closing. And so that will be a credit from the seller to the buyer, even if there's an escrow account.
Correct.
And the escrow account is not refunded till about 30 days after closing. So what that is stating is that the buyer accepts that credit and the buyer's responsible for paying the full years of taxes at the end of the year. However, if there is a substantial change, the buyer does have the right to go back to the seller and try to collect additional taxes.
Keep that in mind. The buyer has the right to go back to the seller. The buyer does not come to you and do that. You're not the facilitator of this contract once it is over. After that, it would be the responsibilities of the two parties that, one, owned the home and now owns the home, to negotiate that out between those two people. And one thing that I will say for prorations, if you're selling a new home, make sure that you're having the conversation with the lender. New home lenders, I'm going to throw them under the bus on this one and say they're notorious for not calculating what the taxes could be. They usually oftentimes they only calculate what the taxes are based upon the unimproved land from before the house was built. This can be a substantial amount that your buyer ends up getting charged after the closing happens, because now it is an improved piece of property. So maybe the tax assessor said that that property was worth $30,000 before, and now that the home is built on it, all of a sudden it's worth $350,000. That's a lot of taxes to pay. This is why it's really important to have really good relationships with lenders. And if your buyer chooses to go with one of those on-site home, not home warranty, but on-site
Builders and
mortgage companies, make sure that that person is overestimating and creating a large escrow account, because it's much better to have a buyer get a check back at the end of the year for paying too much than it is for a buyer to, at the end of the year, find out, oh my gosh, I've got to come up with $15,000.
Which happens. So on all of our county taxing authorities, they have a calculator on there. So the buyer will know what, the probable, in worst case scenario, will be the sales price usually.
Yeah.
The buyer can put in the sales price and know what the taxes are going to be. And if that's not what their lender is taking in, then every month they need to add that into their escrow so that in the next spring, whenever it's reassessed, they don't have sticker shock.
And this is probably one of the places where people end up getting into financial trouble, is because they qualified based upon what the taxes and insurance and principal were going to end up being at such a substantially lower amount. And lenders are notorious for this, because that's the only way those people could qualify.
Yeah, according to national statistics, your taxes go up over 60% on average from being on a new home to the second year.
Yeah.
So, and the buyer does have to make up that escrow, because going back to the builder to get that improved is not a realistic opportunity for most people.
Yeah, exactly.